Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another episode of What's Up with Power. My name is Justin Wagner, and I'll be your host. I'm with Team ODZ. Today we are going to be talking about normalized power and what normalized power can teach you above and beyond what we learned from average power. You can see over here on the side, we've got a live group ride going on in Zwift. We've got a nice pack rolling together at a very easy nice 1.5, 1.8 watts per kilo. Go ahead and jump in and join. Late start is available if you want to join in. If you're watching just here on Facebook or on Twitch or on YouTube or Mixer, we are glad to have you and glad to be able to teach a little bit. So the way this is structured is we're going to have about 15 minutes of teaching followed by 15 minutes of questions and answers. So you can let your questions fly during the teaching section on Facebook is the easiest way for me to grab them. So drop your questions there and we will address them. If it makes sense during the teaching, I will go ahead and address them, or once I'm done with the teaching, we'll go ahead and address the questions interactively. So the topics we teach here come from a book, Training and Racing with the Power Meter. If you haven't heard of it, it's a great resource. Specifically talking about chapter 7 today. This book's written by Hunter Allen and Andrew Coggin. It's a great reference for all things power. So if you are looking to understand more or self-coach or whatever it may be, I highly suggest you get the book. I make $0 if you purchase said book. So it's not expensive, it's on Amazon, but definitely a worthwhile investment if you are serious about training with the power meter. So what are we going to talk about? Okay, so average power. A lot of people, when they first get a power meter, they're used to looking at average numbers. What was my average speed for the ride? What was my average heart rate? All these kind of things. So they get a power meter and they're like, okay, well, my average power, that's good. And they look at it and then maybe they go do a race and they're like, man, I felt like it should have been a way harder average power than that. Well, because average power doesn't tell the whole story. So here we have up on the screen two different workouts. On the top, we have a workout that's 60 minutes at half of your FTP. So this person's FTP is 200 watts. So workout number 1, 60 minutes at 100 watts. Okay, this would be considered active recovery. Okay, the workout down below is 30 minutes at 0 watts. You sit there for 30 minutes, and then you hold your FTP for 30 minutes. Now, if I take the average power in these two cases, they both work out to be 100 watts. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell me that the workout down below is going to hurt a whole lot more and do a whole lot more to your body than the top one would be. In fact, these are two completely different workouts. This top one would be considered active recovery, and this one down below would be a very hard interval. In fact, maybe even potentially impossible. Some people may not be able to hold their FTP for that long. That's definitely, I mean, a lot of people, not just some people. So how can we mathematically tell the difference then between these two workouts? So that's what we're going to talk about. So two workouts, same average power. I think it's just all the text I just said. They call on completely different physiological systems. So how are we going to quantify this difference? And what we're going to talk about, normalized power, how we quantify those differences, is the basics, is how you're going to build upon what we call nearly perfect periodization. So being able to plan your hard weeks, easy weeks, building, tapering, that's called periodization, or how you apply more training and less training. This is the basics for it, and something you need to understand to be able to get to that. So what is normal? So these are the three things we're going to deep dive into. Number 1, normalized power, which accounts for the variability in power during a ride. We're going to talk about intensity factor, which takes normalized power and expresses it as a percentage of your FTP. And we're going to talk about training and stress score, which it quantifies the overall training load. So it's going to take intensity factor and duration into account to create a score for a ride to say how much training stress that put on your body, right? So here's for the getting a little more in depth in the description of what normalized power is. So the algorithm for normalized power is attempting to incorporate two different pieces of information. So scientists, when they were trying to come up with normalized power, knew these two things, and this is what led them to make the formula, which we'll talk about later. So they know that physiological responses, I'm just going to read it because it's kind of specific. Physiological responses to rapid changes in exercise intensity are not instantaneous, but follow a predictable time course. Also, many critical physiological responses are curvilinearly rather than linearly related to exercise intensity. Whoa, okay, so that last one basically means as you go up and up and up in power, it's not just linear, it's more exponential, or how your response to that power, basically. So, knowing these two things, what is the algorithm came up with? So, first of all, you start by calculating a 30-second rolling average for your power. Then, you basically you're going to have a long string of numbers that shows what's been your 30-second rolling average throughout the course of the ride. Then you're going to take those values to the fourth power, okay? That's where that exponential part comes into play. And you average all those values that you did in step 2. And you're going to have a number, single number. And then you're going to take the fourth root of that number, step 3, and that's going to be your normalized power, okay? You don't have to memorize this. There won't be a test. This is purely for those who want to understand the underlying guts, or potentially even write their own software, or use Excel to calculate normalized power. You could plug this into Excel, and you could validate your normalized power for a given ride, prove that you do understand the formula. So now we understand the physiological aspects that they were attempting to model with normalized power. We understand, at least at this high level, the formula they came up with, or we understand there is a formula. So now, from my perspective, okay, fancy physiological terms, mathematical terms, I'm on my bike. I don't care. What does this mean? All right, so two different ways to look at normalized power. The normalized power for a given ride is the wattage you would have averaged if you pedaled smoothly for the entire effort. If the power that it's the power that your body thought it was doing, though the reality of it may have been very sporadic on and off. So, or in other words, it's an estimate of the power that you could have maintained for the same physiological cost if your power output had been perfectly constant rather than variable. All right, so let's think about that. So we had the example of 1 hour at half of our FTP versus half hour at nothing, and half hour at 100% FTP. So in this case, we'll actually, we think we're gonna go right back to it now. Nope, we're not. We'll get to the formula that calculates normalized power in that case, and we'll basically say, we'll be able to see, okay, obviously the normalized power for the second one's gonna be over 100 watts. And that'll basically be, okay, you could have actually held that same number for an hour and gotten the same physiological stress on your body. Now, there's more details than just that, but let's leave it at that for now. So, variability index, okay? Oops. So, a lot of triathletes specifically look at this, or time trialists, want to understand how smooth their ride was. So, in a triathlon or in a time trial, you want to have just really good average power the whole way through. And so there's this term called the Variability Index. It's typically a number. It's going to be at 1 or a little bit above 1. And this is basically telling you how smooth your ride was. So a 1.0 in this would mean your normalized power and your average power were a perfect match. So you just rode beautifully perfect, same number the whole way through, okay? All right, so here is the chart. So remember, we had 60 minutes at half of our FTP versus 30 minutes at nothing and 30 minutes at our entire FTP. So in the first case, our average power is 100 watts. Our normalized power comes out to 100 watts. Therefore, our variability index here is a 1.00. All right, second case, we already know the average power was 100 watts. But in this case, the normalized power comes out to 168 watts with a variability index of 1.68. Okay, so you see that's a pretty high variability index. You wouldn't see normally anything that high on a typical ride. This is obviously a concocted workout to be able to describe these principles. But here you go. So what does this 168 number mean? Well, it means theoretically, for the same training stress score on my body, I could have done 168 watts for 60 minutes and gotten the same training stress on my body. Now I'm going to take a quick side note here and say this doesn't mean that 60 minutes at 168 watts is the same workout as 30 minutes at 200 watts for this person. They do call on different physiological systems, and a couple episodes back we talked about the different training zones, their purposes, and we showed as you go through the zones the different physiological strain, stress on the body. This is where we're talking about sweet spot training. So so they will definitely they'll definitely cause different changes in your body. Just like you could do a sprint workout and end up getting the same TSS as something like this, but it's causing different adaptations in the body. So we'll save that for another day, but rest assured to say that not all TSS is created equal. We'll get into what TSS is here in a second, but just remember that your fitness you build up is based upon the type of workouts you're doing. And while TSS is a great model for most of that, it does not tell the entire story, and then sprint workouts can be a great example of that. But okay, so next up we're talking about intensity factor. So intensity factor is a ratio of your normalized power to your FTP. Okay, so we'll tack this on in the top. Intensity factor was 0.5. Intensity factor down here, which was normalized power over FTP, so you get 0.84. Okay, so you look here. So intensity factor, you can use intensity factor as a good way to recognize change in your fitness. So if you have, let's say you have a race, it's about an hour long, or a hard workout, and you get an intensity factor of about 1.05 or more for that hour, that's a good sign that you may need to take a new FTP test and update your FTP. That basically is saying you can hold more than your FTP for an hour. So that's, we won't get into the nuances of exactly how to precisely calculate your FTP. This is a good indicator that you may need to reevaluate it. Okay. All right, so kind of the whole kit and caboodle that we're going after here today is actually training and stress score. All right, the training and stress score takes into account the normalized power for a ride as well as the duration, and this is going to give you a number. So you've probably seen You may have seen on Strava, they have this thing called the suffer score, okay? Suffer score is based on your heart rate and your heart rate zones. And it's similar in concept to what they're doing for training and stress score. So for power, your TSS, your training and stress score, basically tells you how hard or how much fitness you would have built that day. So, so this is how it's calculated, is basically
right on.
Duration, or time in seconds, times your intensity factor squared over 36, or it's your square of your intensity factor multiplied by duration, okay? So if I had an intensity factor of 1, if I held my FTP for 1 hour, so time and duration would be 1 in this case, intensity factor would be 1. So time in seconds, 3,600 divided by 36, multiplied by 1. This comes out to 100. Somebody's probably I probably said the math wrong, but 1 hour at FTP is 100 TSS. That's a constant you should know and understand. And it'll be on the test at the end of today's presentation. So that's basically how we get training and stress score. You got duration and intensity factor. So the longer you go at the same intensity, the more stress it's going to cause in your body. Or the shorter you go, the higher you have to increase your intensity to get the same stress on your body. And it's squared. And remember, intensity factor was like a percentage. So if I only do half of my FTP, that's 50%. When I square 50%, it goes down actually to 25%. So you see, as you're under your FTP, it drops rapidly. And if I were to hold twice my FTP, it's going to go up at 4x, right? So that's where you can see the exponential relationship between intensity and your training and stress score. All right, so top workout again, back to this one, 25 TSS for the top workout, or 50 TSS for the bottom workout. So in this case, same duration, but we did essentially twice the amount of stress on the body in the bottom workout than we did on the top. And if you're building your workouts in Zwift, you will notice down at the bottom that they have what they call stress points. So that's your training and stress score, okay? So as you're building and manipulating workouts of your own in Zwift, that'll update live and show you what that TSS for your workout is going to be. Okay, so with that, we are going to transition to question and answers. We got a couple of questions here on the live feed. Can pull up here. Oh, not necessarily a question, but a comment. So here locally, we've got quite a bit of smoke. There's fires coming over from Montana currently. Brian Litzenberger says, "What's up with this stupid smoke?" Indeed. So anyway, glad to have you here, Brian. Thanks for joining. So any questions? Let them fly on the live stream. We've got the group ride still going here for another 10 minutes. I'll hang on for a while if anybody has any questions. You know, it's a lot to digest. Normalized Power is if you want to understand all the nuts and bolts, it can be complicated, but just know that normalized power means a whole lot more about how hard your workout was than average power. If you get anything else, if you don't get anything else from the workout, just know that pay attention to normalized power, and you probably could even completely ignore average power unless you understand the nuances of the differences between them. It is relevant, but normalized power is definitely going to mean a bit more to you. Okay, we got a question here. Is the Zwift stress score fairly close to the training peaks TSS? So I'm assuming Taya is asking about that stress score shown at the workout builder. And I will say they absolutely should be, and if they're not the same, it's a bug. I've done some manual calculations of workouts, and they should be the same. So they are based on the same formula as published in Training and Racing with the Power Meter. That book's in the public domain. You can buy it. The formula is right there in the nitty-gritty details, and pretty much all power training systems use that as their formula for stress score. You'll notice that they don't all use the same name. That's actually for copyright reasons. I believe Training Peaks has copyrights in some of the names, so that's why you'll see the name change here and there. How do you prepare for 160 kilometer fondo if your FTP is 320 a week before in terms of tapering? So great question, Azzy. So tapering comes down to total TSS in a given week, and I don't have time to really go into specific tapering examples. I believe there is a great, I want to say we've done an episode on tapering here, but let's quickly say you get a TSS number for the entire week. It's based on your current fitness level, and as you go above that, you're going deeper in the hole, and it's getting harder on your body. And so for taper, what you typically want to do is decrease the overall TSS for the week while maintaining constant intensity. So you're going to still do some hard efforts, but you're going to bring down overall intensity, so your body is actually recovering, or it's peaking. Your fitness is coming, or it's called your freshness, or your difference between your fatigue and your freshness is moving up. So hard to give an example of that, but basically the general principle is do what you're doing before, do less of it, enough less of it so that your body is able to taper. And so a coach can be really good at helping you drill that in if you want more specifics. I do have an episode where we talk about weekly TSS. And I want to say we've done one on tapering. If we haven't, I know Thomas Endurance Coaching or Data Driven Athlete may have a specific post or video on that. Good question. Okay, Phil Mills asks, is there a debate over relationship between normalized power and average power in a similar sense to how valid a 20-minute FTP is for older ages? No, there's no debate there, Phil, because normalized power and average power are mathematically completely different ways of being calculated. So they're just intended for completely different purposes. Now, there's definitely a debate in ways of understanding your FTP, and I would say that the real golden thing is to get into a lab and measure your blood lactate levels, because these tests are all attempting to approximate when your lactate generation crosses a threshold. And I think it's generating 4 millimoles of lactate per liter. Somebody could quote me, I could be wrong on that, but that's what all these tests are attempting to actually get at, and they're pretty good estimates. Now, the thing you hint at is that a lot of people believe that everyone can hold their FTP for the same amount of time. Well, that's not true, and as you get more and more into this, you'll understand. So like WKO4 software by Training Peaks will give you something that's called time to exhaustion. Okay, so they're going to calculate your FTP and your time to exhaustion. So that's going to take into account or tell you how long they believe you could actually hold that FTP, and it's not the same for everyone. So that's just going to depend on how high your fitness level is, how much you ride. People may be able to hold their lactate threshold for longer than others just because they're more accustomed and built to it. But great question, Phil. So they're just different. They're different numbers calculated for different reasons, and they do complement each other, because like we were saying, for a time trial, if you have your average power and your normalized power about the same, that means that you held a very steady effort. But like a crit race, you're going to notice your average power is going to be a lot lower than your normalized power because you had to burst through every single one of those corners, or every sprint, or every preem, and all those sprints increase your normalized power quite a bit. So go. Zwift Academy. So Zwift Academy has 1 to 2 workouts with a stress score of 185 plus for a 75 to 90 minute session. That number does not seem possible to me. I don't think that's correct, Taya, because for 90 minutes, theoretically, if you were to hold your FTP constantly for 90 minutes, you should get a TSS of 150. So 185 plus for a hard workout would take you generally at least 2 hours or more to generate that much TSS. So send me a note on that, Tay. Actually, I'd like to take a peek at that and see what might be going on. They might have some crazy high sprint intervals in there that might throw things off a bit. Yeah, that's generally not. Send me. I'm not sure I'll remember that session number today. Just shoot me a message on it. I'll take a peek. Thanks for all the questions, everyone. Do want to give a quick shout out that Training Peaks is a great sponsor of the show, and they do offer a discount code. If anybody's looking to use their premium services, you can use the code ODZ20 or ODZ20 to get 20% off Training Peaks premium services. So appreciate having them as a sponsor. They have a lot of great software to help you understand and plan a lot of this. We talk about it a lot. There are definitely free alternatives. There's definitely lots of stuff out there. Don't feel like we're saying you can only use Training Peaks, but it is good stuff. I do use it personally, and not because they give it to me for free. I do pay for it. So anyway, with that, we're gonna go ahead and bring down the live stream. We do appreciate having everyone on here. Come on later today, and we'll have Ian Murray from Skills and Drills. Or actually, no, we won't today because Ian's out of town for an Ironman race, I believe. So Skills and Drills will not be on today, but we should have live on the channel tomorrow. I believe we may have a Thursday night throwdown race. And there's a schedule on the channel up above with the header that tells you all the different things we live stream throughout the week. Appreciate everyone coming. Hope to see you again. If you enjoy this content, feel free to share it with your friends. Hit the like button. We have lots of good content in here. We really appreciate you coming and supporting us, and hope this information can help you take your training to the next level. So with that, we will sign off and say have a wonderful day.